Hello. So I have a sort of mental running list of authors that I want to read all of their books or more of their books, and today I decided to make that list not mental and write it down. I have about 25 authors here, and they are in different categories. I can't say this the way the Spanish people say it, but sí o sí tengo que leerlos. And this is authors that I do want to read everything that they have written. I, can't promise that I will DNF if there's a particular book that I don't like, but I do want to try everything that they've written. And I did try to include authors in this list that have written a fair amount of books, like 3 or more, I would say. I don't want to include one-offs because that doesn't feel like an author that I want to read. It's just a book that I want to read. So the first one is Mariana Enriquez. I think I've read 3 or 4. This is a horror author from Argentina that writes short story collections and novels, and I absolutely love her work. The next one is Samanta Schweblin. Also kind of horror, kind of just weird, surreal fiction. I have read her short story collection, the novella Fever Dream, which I really liked, the novel Kentucky's, which I also really liked. Nona Fernández, she writes primarily about the dictatorship in Chile and the effects that this had, continuing up till now, but in a very creative, immersive, science fiction-y way. Isabel Allende, I have read 5, I think, of her books, which means I have 25 more to read. So definitely a long-term project, but I do absolutely love her works, even though, they're definitely not perfect. Some of them are very product of their time, which is not, an excuse, but I do absolutely love her, immersive family drama, touch of magical realism. I think she's just a gorgeous writer. Next, we have Agustina Bazterrica. I think she has written the least amount of books on this list, but I love Tender as the Flesh. I do still need to read it in Spanish. I've only read it in English. She, again, is a weird sci-fi borderline horror author from Argentina again. Camila Sosa Villada is another one who doesn't have a ton of works out, but I really loved her novel Las Malas, and then I read a kind of poetry, short fiction collection, and I want to read her other novel. And then Dolores Redondo is a thriller mystery novela negra author. I still have to read her most famous trilogy, a couple others, but I do really enjoy her works, although after the fact I realized that one of them, the prequel to the trilogy, was really irresponsible because it talked about how awful the conditions after Hurricane Katrina were in the Superdome, and after I read it and realized that that is complete misinformation, that's not cool. How do you not research that when you're writing a book about it? But that's a whole other topic. So then the next category is leería, otros. People that I've read books from them and I really liked them and I want to read more from them. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have to be a completionist or not, but And the first one could have gone in either category probably, but it's Cristina Rivera Garza. I've read 3 books of hers, I think, and she's fairly prolific, I think. She's a Mexican author, books about kind of conditions in Mexico for women. Rosa Montero is a kind of widely reaching genre hopping author. I listened to the first book of her sci-fi trilogy, and I really want to reread it and read along physically because I just think that I will absorb it a lot better. It's kind of a reimagining of Blade Runner, and it was really, really interesting. But yeah, I want to reread it physically and then read the rest of the trilogy. Paula Gallego is a very, very prolific fantasy author from Spain, mostly YA and middle grade fantasy, and I really enjoy her works. Again, not sure I will read all of them, but definitely would like to read more. Same with Jaime Alfonso Sandoval. He is from Mexico, and I have really enjoyed most of what I've read from him so far. He writes everything from children's books to kind of YA, and so I would like to read more of his. I did get the first book in a series that he wrote as a Kobo audio credit. So I will probably be starting that sometime soon. We'll see how I like it. Iria Parente y Selene Pascual are authors that write exclusively together. And I have also really enjoyed most of what I've read from them. Fantasy, sci-fi, queer books, as well as like romance retellings and that sort of thing. Jara Santamaria is a middle grade fantasy author from Spain. And I have read her Los Dioses del Norte series, except the newest one, which I do want to read soon. And she has another series that I haven't started, so I'd be interested to try that one as well. Pablo Rivero, I read La Cría recently, and I had mixed feelings about it, but I was very, very engrossed. And so I am interested to read others of his books and see how I feel about them, because I really am not sure how I felt about the one that I did read, but it was fascinating, so that always intrigues me. Héctor Zagal is I believe, Mexican author who writes primarily like historical fiction, and I am not normally big on that genre, but I really, really liked El Vampiro del Virrey that I read from him, and I'd like to reread that and try other ones of his works because it was very engrossing. And I don't normally have that experience with historical fiction. Claudia Pinheiro, I read her book Elena Sabe, and she has several other ones, and I really, really liked that one. So yeah, the next category is Tengo Curiosidad, authors that I haven't read anything from yet, but there are multiple books that I'm very interested in. The first one is Elaine Vilar Madruga, and there are multiple of her books that seem very, very interesting to me. I think they are largely kind of suspensey, horror-y books. Pedro Juan Gutierrez wrote the Dirty Havana trilogy, and I really want to read something from Cuba. I don't think I've read anything from Cuba, and so that is kind of a classic. I don't know how I will feel about it. I also don't know really how, like, it's received in Cuba at all, but I would be interested to try it and read a lot more about it. Elena Poniatowska, I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry. This is a Mexican author, and I think she's called like the Red Queen of Mexico or something like that, so of course I immediately perked my ears up, but like a master storyteller, supposedly, you know, very, very interested. Have no idea where to begin, so if you have recommendations, definitely let me know. Monica Ojeda, I believe she is Ecuadorian, and another one that I haven't read anything from Ecuador, I don't think, and another kind of, you know, horror, weird, super difficult themed author. There is a trend here for sure. A super random one is Dario Villascaucelo, I think is what I have written down here, which is a horror author from Spain. I believe I saw Moonlight Books talk about this author, otherwise I would never probably have heard about him, but he does have multiple audiobooks on Storytel, so I am very interested. I haven't really listened to too much just regular horror from Spanish authors. Paula Gallego is another YA or new adult maybe fantasy author that has, I think, 2 different series potentially, and I am interested in trying them. And Almudena Grandes is a historical fiction author who wrote a like 4 or 5 book series about the Civil War in Spain, and very, very interested. I think she has other books as well, but super interested in that potentially. Might go poorly immediately, I have no idea, but I don't know too much about the history of Spain, and so I would like to read more books on that. And then our last category is No hace falta continuar, and it's just a couple authors that it's not that I would never read another one of their books, but based on what I've read, I probably won't. I'm not motivated to. The first one is Carlos Sisi, and this is a horror author from Spain who wrote a vampire trilogy and a zombie series and some other stuff too. I listened to 1.5-ish of the vampire trilogy, and he's just really sexist, and it just was, the story was not good enough to keep going. It's not that it was bad. There were aspects of it that I really liked, which is why I did try to keep going in the series past the first book, but it just didn't end up being worth it. So then we have Eva Garcia Sáenz. Oh man, I forget what it's called, but it's a super famous series. Yeah, I read the first one and I just don't feel any need to continue. The characters are so annoying that I just honestly couldn't root for them on any level. And so while it's like a historical mystery thriller where like the crimes are kind of tied into history, and so that part of it was interesting, but that was a very minor part of it. Most of it was about the interpersonal drama of the characters, and it had some of the cringiest lines that I've ever read in my life, even in through Spanish, which often I am cringed out way less in Spanish than I am in English, but I was cringing out even in Spanish, so that's pretty bad. But I am interested to watch the movies because they have been made into movies. Then the last one is probably the most controversial, and it is Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Again, I would potentially try again. I might try Marina at some point, but I have listened to The Prince of the Mist, and I read The Shadow of the Wind, and I didn't really like either one. I just don't find him to have enough to say to justify all of the talking. It was okay, but I don't feel the need to embark on several more 500 plus page novels where women are pawns in his insufferable male characters' lives. And so, I think Carlos and I might be just calling it quit. Actually, both Carloses, Carlos Cece and Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Sorry, viewers, if your name is Carlos. But that is where we are at with some authors. If you have recommendations, definitely leave them in the comments and let me know if you like or don't like any of these authors, and I will see you in the next video.